Alright, I thought as preparation for the semifinal, we'd at least take a quick skim of the rule set and come up with some thoughts. So it's going to be level 7 and 8. Let's go to create hand. Why not? Level 7 and 8. All decks. Alright. There's no requirement to use level 7, so I'm just going to pop open level 8. Same plus combo elemental, so no plus wall. And one of the main reasons to use a lower level is, for instance, if you think like 8765s are really good, maybe 8764s are even better because they play well against 8765s. The 7-4 stuff plays really well off itself, though it misses the 7-5 chance to pick up plus walls on 8s. The 4-6 part covers that. So you might think like, if 8765s are where my opponent's going to be, maybe 8764s are where I want to be. However, there's no plus wall, so that's really not going to be the case. So I think we're going to see basically all level 8s. Maybe there'd be a reason to go level 7. Sorry about the squeak a second ago. My chair's squeaky right now. Maybe there's a case for using level 7 for access to rares, but without plus wall, I don't know. I'm obviously not a believer in rares. Alright, must use at least 3 different elements. You can use multiple elements on the same card. So if there are multi-element cards available, that is an option. Alright, but the main stips are no 9-9s, max of 1-9-8. So, without plus wall, raw power matters more. So this might be similar to last round, around for 9-7-7s. We can see like 9-1-7-7, or more likely if we scroll down to FFT, something like this 1-7-9-7, which you'll notice has an elemental. What elemental is it? Who knows? I think that's rock, but who knows? So maybe that's the way to go. I think Stuff mentioned he was considering 9-7-5-5s as well. I would not be that based around building towards a starter, because a starter easily could become nonsensical with E in play. But also with no plus wall, it's really hard to take stuff. So consider the 9-8 corner, right? If there's an elemental next to the 8, and the 9-8 isn't on an elemental, and there's no +1 facing the 9, your 9-8 corner is probably safe, right? If the opponent does not go with a 9 in every direction, then your 9-7 has a good chance to be safe as well. I'm going to pause the video so I can sneeze and not destroy you. Man, that was incredible self-control to finish my sentence before sneezing. Just masterful work. Really the most impressive thing that will happen in this video for sure. So let's put together a hand and just see how it looks. Let's grab some 9-8 corner. I don't really care about the backside too much because there's no plus wall, so maybe a 9-8-7. Maybe a 9-8-7. Just take raw power. So those are in newer decks. Alright, so let's say 1-7-8-9, I guess. Okay. And now the problem is the natural 1-7-9-7 doesn't conflict well with this. But I do think it's worth having the 9-8 as a corner. So actually, let's chuck this for now. Let's say we'll take 1-7-9-7 with an element. 7-9-7-1, sure. Now these 7-9-7s are kind of bad at retaking each other, but I think the raw power is useful. Just throwing together a hand to see what it looks like. I think one of the best ways to prepare for stuff is to make 2 plausible hands that are different, like that follow distinct strategies. We will not have time to be doing that because their match will be starting shortly. But okay, it looks like these 9-7-7 options are limited. So maybe we'll just pick some 9-7-6-4s or something. Anyways, I guess what I'm saying is, what I would do is I would build 2 hands. The cards don't matter that much. So, okay, we'll take this 9-1-7-7. Nope, we're going to need a lot of elements now. So maybe we'll take Elena, and definitely got to have right on our last card. But we need a 9 to the left. So maybe a 9 with a 7 facing right. So is there like a 1779? Something like this. Okay. So take something like this. You put this together. You notice it doesn't have 3 elements. This hand's illegal, but that's fine. And then you make a second hand, and you just look at the two hands, and you think, okay, the other hand starts, say, their 9-8 corner. Say they have a 9-8 corner for 1, with an 8 to the right and a 9 down. If there is an element in 2, what do I do? Do I have a way to react to that I am comfortable with? And I think we do, right? No, sorry, I said an 8 to the right and a 9 down. I was looking for setups in 5, and I was thinking 7-9-7-1 sets up against a 9-9 corner, but it's not a 9-9 corner, it's a 9-8 corner. And you do kind of looking around like that, like, okay, do I have that 9-8 covered? Do I have a 9-8 the other way in 1 covered? Now, what you're probably going to conclude is that it's really hard to have every 9-8 covered if the E's work out badly. So what you might conclude is my chance to cover the 9-8 specifically is pretty low. But that means their chance to cover my 9-8 is probably pretty low as well if the elements come lucky. So I should probably take a 9-8 corner and work from there, right? I should probably just like say, this is unlikely to be easily dealt with, and it gives me a reasonable option, and if I can deal with theirs, great, and if I can't, not so great. But maybe you also try to build a hand to see if you can, and see how that looks as well, and see if that looks pleasing. We have a 9 in every direction, so we're not as worried about 9-7 corners. But if they build like an 8-8 based hand, which I didn't consider here, an 8-8 based hand is very scared of all these 9-7s, right? Because if there's an element in 4, suddenly an 8 facing down or up can't take the 7-9-7-1. That has potential safety. And I think that really scares me off hands with less raw power. So I think 9-7s do seem like the way to go. It seems like not many of them have E, but that means 1797 might be the most kind of valuable card available on the set, because it takes up an E slot while being what you want. It's interesting that we've had these 2 rounds that have both been pretty good for 9-7s, because this is, generally speaking, not all that powerful a card. But with certain rules reduced, it really jumps up in value. We're really seeing rule sets where raw power is shining. And so, anyways, that's sort of how I think about hand construction. Is I'd put together a few plausible iterations of hands, and then just think like, okay, how do these look like they line up? And when I was satisfied with how they line up, that would be when I'd have, made my hand, right? I guess that's all I can do in advance of the round starting. I'll see if I have any messages, but otherwise we'll pause and wait for the round to start. The game is up. I wish good things for both of these players. I think Stuff has talked about being very uncomfortable with Elemental, which is fair. Many of us have done such. Vid is much more comfortable with Elemental. I don't know who handles no plus wall better. I think Vid is not all that comfortable without plus wall. And I'm not sure where Stuff is. So I'm not very sure on that front. And, I mean, I think in general Vid should be favorite. Not sure what margin. But I also think Vid plays in a very combo-oriented, create winning chances style. And Stuff, especially when he's playing better, plays in a really good fundamental style. And I tend to think good fundamentals beat combo-oriented play when the two clash, as a general stylistic advantage. So, okay, we're getting messages about the Euros, but we cannot focus on the Euros. We must focus on the match. So actually, I'll pause, respond to comments on the Euros, and we'll come back when the match is happening. All right, we're back. We can see the hands. We can see that a rare has been gone for, which I think is just a horrific choice. Vid has messaged me saying me being online adds pressure. They have both gone for a 9-8 and both gone for 9-7s. I think this is smart. Um, they each have, or at least Vid has a 9 in each direction. Stuff also has a 9 in each direction. Stuff has gone with 3 elements. Vid has gone with 4. I remember when, and obviously I didn't learn my lesson from the talk earlier, but I remember when Piggyman beat me in TTAC, one thing he said was he thought not having elements on cards is just giving up value. And like for me, it's kind of, but I want to use these cards. I don't want to weaken them. And for Piggy, it was kind of, yeah, the differences between cards exist, but they're not that big. And the advantage of potential +1s is just this huge swing in games. If we look at the actual things on board, though, it looks like the elementals can be treated as a flat -1. If I was looking at this position, despite 7 elements being on board, I would treat this as good because I don't have to think about elemental as anything besides a -1. I would be like, okay, I don't have to worry about that part of the game. This helps, right? And so, in that sense, I think this might favor stuff. There also is not an obvious kind of starter plan here. I was wondering about elemental distribution and the math behind it. I'm curious if anyone knows. Because there's kind of, okay, Vid goes for the defensive side starter. Yeah, this should be viable, right? There's never a threat in 4 or 6. We'll come back to this in a sec. This seems very reasonable to me. With 5597 as the recapturer. This is a little clumsy if it was the plan, because 5597 is not actually a reliable recapturer, right? If there's an element in 1 but not in 2, then this pattern doesn't work so cleanly, right? If there's also an element in 4, the card in 1 would be safe, but you need it to be able to recapture 2. So there's some benefit to having at least the number be at least 2 higher than the number facing out from 2. And even if it's 2 higher, well, the card in 2 can never get +1. Okay, and this seems like a plausible way to use the rare. My instinct was probably going to be, though we hadn't gotten to actually considering the position, chuck the rare in the corner to get it out of the hand so you can play with your real cards. But this seems very reasonable. I have no problems here. I was definitely talking about something. It's very important. Completely lost to me. Um, Elemental. Oh yeah, elemental math. Because there's kind of 2 ways of doing it. One is you randomly decide a number between 0 and 9 elements, and then say it comes up 7, you then randomly distribute those 7 around the board. And that will, of course, have an average number of elements being 4.5 because you've randomly picked between 0 and 9. And if each of those are equally probable, then, equal odds of 0 and 9, 1 and 8, 2, 7, etc., 3, 6, 4, 5, you're going to get 4.5 on average. And each square will have a 50% chance of having an element. Now, the following will sound very similar, but it is quite different. You could also calculate each square individually as 50%. This will also have an average of 4.5 elements per game, and it will also have each square as 50% to have an element or not, but it in fact leads to a quite different distribution. Because if each square is calculated separately, then the odds of all 9 being an element is, 50% for the first square times 50% for the second square times 50% for the third square. All those 50% need to come up element, and so it's going to be 0.5 to the 9th, which is like 1 out of 512, I think. So like 1 in 500 to have every square of an element, while if it's just randomly chosen at the start between 0 and 9 elements, then there's 10 different options, because 0 to 9 is 10 options. So one has a 10% chance of every square having an element, a 10% chance of no squares having an element, and the other one, the chance of every square having an element or no squares is 1 in 500 each, right? Depending on how you calculate it, they're both 50% for each square, but you have this massive change in distribution. If you do the 50% square by square method, you are much more likely to get a distribution around 3, 4, 5, and 6 elements. with more or less than that being relatively rare and getting quickly rarer as we go out to the extremes. While if we randomly pick a number at the start, it's going to be an equal distribution, and you're just as likely to get 0 as 9. I think it has to be that you randomly pick a number at the start, not because we're specifically seeing 7 elements here, but because like you regularly see games with 0, 1, 8, or 9 elements, and if you were calculating it square by square, those would be really rare, right? Um, the odds of 1 and 8 would be much higher than the odds of 0 and 8. The odds of 1 out of the 9 or 8 out of 9 would be much higher than 0 or 9, but it would still be really low. This would still be something like, all in all, for all 4 of those situations, 0, 1, 8, or 9 elements, you'd have it like less than 1% of the time or something around there. And I think we see it a lot more than 1% of the time. So my guess is it's random at the start. I'm not sure that affects strategy at all, but I am curious if anyone knows what actual math is used there, because there's an argument for both. And yeah. Okay, let's think about the position. Plausible starter from Vid. Stuff can, of course, grab safety in 1 or 6, but if he does so, he needs a plan, right? He needs a plan for an L. Now, there are a bunch of viable plans for L's here. For instance, if he goes in 1 and then plays 7, 7, 1, 9 or 9, 7, 3, 6, and 4, he sets up 6, 2, 8, 9 for 5, and he has a threat in 5 and Vid doesn't. Maybe a way to create problems. That's going to force Vid probably to block 5, and then you might be able to land 7, 9, 7, 1 with the potential chance to be safe in 7 or something like that. Though, actually, given the element in 7, maybe not as good a plan. 8 not having an element is actually really relevant to a lot of the L's. Because a lot of the kind of L plans you'd have is I go 1, they go 3, I go 4, they have to block 5, and I would like to be able to play safely in 7, but I don't actually have safety there. And unless they set me up in 6, I don't have a good move there. So there's a lot of L's that get a little more suspicious. But I think going in 1 and then 4 is a reasonable plan. Are there setups in 6? I do not see any setups in 6. So I think it makes much more sense for stuff to go in 1 than in 3. Now, if stuff goes in the far corner. Okay, so I think traditional thinking is this did not. Okay, this did set up 6 actually. So Vid no longer has safety in 6. Stuff, however, has not lost safety in either 1 or 3. So Vid no longer has safety in 3. So Stuff is saying, I want to play 1, 7, 9, 7, and 1, because now if you go with a 9 down in 3, I can combo it with 6, 2, 8, 9. And if you go in 3 with an 8 down, I can simply take it. But there's a bunch of questions to ask. One is, can Vid attack this card immediately? For instance, if Vid plays 1, 9, 8, 6, and 8, what's the plan? If you go 1, 7, 9, 7 in 6, then Vid can combo you in 3 with 5, 5, 9, 7. He has the plus. So one of your captures is difficult to do, and so you are kind of restricted to 6, 2, 9, 8. But 6, 2, 9, 8, you do not have recaptures in 5. So Vid may be able to just go something in 3, probably 5, 5, 9, 7. Now, Vid at this point is running out of down power, so this might not work at all. But one idea is to attack from 8. And it seems a plausible idea to me. Another idea is to attack from 6. Stuff's only recapture in 8 is 7, 9, 7, 1. So if you could set up against that, you might have some initiative. I don't see a way to set up against that. And also it just concedes 3, and I'm not sure you have enough compensation for conceding 3. But you could consider something like 1, 9, 8, 6 in 6. Stuff goes 3, but now you can go 1. You can play 5, 5, 9, 7 and 1, And you have two decent cards for facing the action. Maybe that's a little something as well. That seems like a plausible way to play as well. I don't think 6 should be so bad. Another option is to go 1 because stuff threatens to go in 1 himself, and often if the other person has an idea to go somewhere, you should go there. Here, if you go 1 and he goes 3, you're probably going 6 next without being able to lock in 3. And that seems kind of uncomfortable. I'd rather start in 6 and then go 1, locking in 1 and 2, and being able to attack 6 as a target rather than go in 6. Rather than go in 1, they go 3, locking in 2 and 3, and then you go in 6 and you don't have targets on the board. So I think if you were gonna go 1, you'd probably want, if you're thinking I should go 1, you probably want to start in 6. You want to do the move that kind of obliges 3 so that you can land 1 after 3. Very common thing to do is go 5. This is kind of the set stuff up player's move. If you go 5, you really have to make sure stuff can't reply in 1 because again you don't have 3, so you really don't want stuff to be able to go 1. And if you can't prepare against 1, then I think you should not be considering 5 seriously. So maybe 7, 7, 1, 9, and 5 makes some sense. But I think like anything else. Okay, Vid goes 6, which I had suggested, but it doesn't set up 5, and it doesn't take 9. So this does something interesting. I had considered 1, 9, 8, 6, and 6 because I thought it was useful to have 9 flipped. But of course I'm an idiot because it walks into a plus and 3. So this is doing the same thing, but without conceding that plus, but it is giving stuff a free card, right? 1986, one of the advantages of it in 6 is it's a card you can attack from 5. This is not a card you can attack from 5. So how carefully has Vid worked this out? Let's say stuff goes in 3. I'm not sure whether 6289 or 1797, so let's keep open which card he will play there. I think Vid is somewhat obliged to play 5597 and 1, right? Anything else seems a bit strange. And we will have a situation where, because stuff's about to go up 7-3, Vid will make it 6-4. Stuff is up a card, and it's not obvious. 1986 has threats. Maybe he'll have kept the bet sweepers. Will stuff have something there? Maybe not, but just barely. It's hard for me to calculate with elemental. But like, let's say stuff plays 6, 2, 8, 9, and 5 at the end. Then Vid can just barely eke out a tie with 9, 7, 3, 6 in 8, where 1, 9, 8, 6 can take anything that captures that from 7. Note that 9, 7, 3, 6 can't capture that from 7 because it's a -1. So you could see lines like that where there's just barely ties. There might be other ties there. That's just the one that came to mind for me, taking advantage of the elemental. What if stuff instead uses 6, 2, 8, 9, and 3 and plays 1, 7, 9, 7, and 5? Now Vid doesn't want to play 1, 9, 8, 6, and 8 because 7, 9, 7, 1 can take it safely. 9, 7, 3, 6 is a really crummy sweeper here. But it's only 6-4. Now that looks pretty good to me. If Vid goes in 4 and tries to keep like 1, 9, 8, 6 as sweeper, then stuff can go in 7. So that one looks more promising to me. My instinct now is that stuff should use 6, 2, 8, 9, and 3, and keep 1, 7, 9, 7 for later. Yeah, that looks like the slightly more appealing option. Because, like, Vid's move in 1 seems pretty obliged right now against 3. Like, it's just like, Yeah, I mean, if stuff goes 3 and you don't go 1, I'm not really sure what you're doing. And stuff doesn't have to block 5. He could also play 8. But basically, stuff should be trying to solve this for a win at this point. She should be going, if I go 3 and he goes 1, I'm not going to have time to calculate everything else. But I want to figure out what my best response is to 1 now, and which cards I need to keep to have that response. And so he might decide, for instance, that he goes 3, Vid goes 1, he should go 8. All right, he's played 1797. This, I thought, was incorrect. Now, it could be there's many tools, right? It could be that after 5597 and 1, your plan is to go 8 anyway, not 5. But I think it is important that 5597 and 1, 6289 and 5, 9736 does sneak out the tie. That is a tie. There's no plus wall. If there was plus wall, it would die a million ways, but there's no plus wall that does get the tie. So stuff needs another way to attack now, which he may well have. Vid goes 1. Is there something else you could put in 5? Well, anything else is kind of going to leave you with less tools, I think. But it might just work. For instance, does 9736 and 5 work? 9736 and 5 might just work. It might have been a lot of ways here, and this may be better than what I said. You may not have needed a strong numbers facing out from 5 at all. Because if Vid goes 1 and stuff goes 5, the 9736 is just so bad. Yeah. Okay. So maybe you can't go 1 through Vid. Maybe this was just as good or better than the move I suggested in 3. So you could think about 9736 and 4. But I think you just lose. There's 1986 and 8. But the 9736 not being able to take 6s to the left is just devastating for keeping it as a sweeper. That card is played so badly this game. Which I think is just because of the elements, but an interesting effect. Yeah, I think this is probably just stuff's win. I wonder if 1986 and 6 would have been a little better, such that you at least had threats in 5. But it is annoying they combo it, because then you have no threats against 9. So I'm kind of out on 6 now. This game has convinced me 6 was a bad idea, which means 1 was a bad idea, which means I think maybe you had to go 8? I'm not sure. Element's really tough. But now my instinct is that Vid should have played 1986 and 8 on turn 3. But a difficult situation. A nice move from stuff. Really nice move from stuff. Yeah, I think Vid is just kind of in trouble. I think lost. I think it's over. I don't think 9736 and 4 does anything. I don't think 1986 and 8 does anything. I don't think 9736 and 7 does anything. Just trying to come up with some way to create threats here. Yeah. I think you go 5597 and 1 and hope that stuff has a aneurysm. Like, it's not like you're going to play 1986 and 1. 1986 is kind of the one card in your hand that does make threats. Could you go 1986 and 5? That's a possible move. That's a candidate move to consider. Yeah, but you just have no right power. Your 9736 is just so dead. So dead. Yeah. I think we were about to congratulate Stuff on making the finals. 2024 year of Stuff. I said it all of 2023, or much of 2023. I did not think it was actually going to happen, but it sure seems to be happening. Vid, of course, is just like iconing every tournament he plays. But this feels like a very deserved win for Stuff here. I think 5597 and 1, you make the standard move and you force Stuff to find something. I haven't checked very thoroughly. I think 9736 and 5 wins, and I think there's a decent chance there's a win in 8 as well. But not entirely sure. We will calculate it if and when it happens. And one thing keeping 6289 did is there's some lines where 1, 5, and 4 gets occupied, where 6289 just lands in 8, immediately ending the game because it can't be taken. Where 1797 would not have that power. So it is possible Stuff picked the better move here. I just calculated one line that it seemed like the other way was better. But now I'm pretty sure Stuff's move worked, and I'm not entirely sure my move worked. So maybe we should be favoring his move. Okay, I have said I'm not good at saving lost positions, but I do think you force the player to find a slightly awkward move by going in 1. Maybe it's just automatic. Maybe this is the trickiest option. But like, I don't know. This just doesn't do anything. You're down 7-3. So if Stuff plays like 9736 and 8, and you go 1986 and 5, and you're like, yes, 6-4. Stuff goes in 1, and you lose. Now I'm not saying like you weren't losing anyway. I'm trying to think in games people save this late in the game when they are lost and this is a losing move. Does this tend to actually be harder for the opponent to find a win? And my guess is no, but I could be very much wrong. So let's make sure 9736 and 8 wins. 1986 it definitely does beat. Despite the -1 on the card in 6, you think could set up a plus in 5. That is not in fact a plus. But actually maybe this makes it a good test because Stuff doesn't understand how elemental works. So maybe this will make him freak out. So maybe this is the best try. If 5597 in 5, that doesn't take anything, you can just go 1. If 5597 in 4, there's no combo threats, so you can go in 5, you win 6-4. If 1986 in 4, same thing. And if 1986 in 1, you can go in 5, you win 7-3. And if 5597 in 1, you can play 7971 in 4, and you flip a lot. Yeah, so that looks pretty straightforward. I suspect there's not just one win here, right? Vid has no ups. 6289 and 1 looks really appealing. Though I suspect there's many paths to victory. Yeah, 6289 and 1 does look very good as well. Yeah. I think there's this instinct to do the chaotic move. But if the chaotic move just grants free safety, is it in fact more chaotic than the move that maybe doesn't give them something super obvious, even if it gives them something that clearly works? I don't know. Vid did get low on time. Sometimes you play this kind of move when you realize everything is lost and you're low on time, so you haven't really checked this move. You just think, okay, everything else I've seen definitely doesn't work, so let's try this one. But I do think one was a more practical try, but it didn't like work. So how seriously am I saying this? Not very seriously. I think the losing move was in six, but I think that was a kind of hard situation. Um, but I think six ended up just giving three, and if you don't have one there, you can't do this. Part of the reason I think you go one is just because like the point of six is to force the occupation of three to go one, and so like I feel like spiritually it's important to in fact follow through on that. All right. I received a message where someone thinks, apparently, possibly Vid, that, but I'm not sure, um, that Vid may have turned a win into a loss. I don't think this was winning for Vid. I'd be very surprised if this was winning for Vid. I think 5597 and 1, unless I just missed something huge here, like 1986 and 1 with the point that you can combo 9736 and 4, but I don't think they let you do that. I think they just block 5 or something and you have nothing to take. I guess you can take 5 from 8. Maybe there was hope there. Maybe 19861 was the chance. All right. Vid mentioning 5597 and 4 instead of 7. Well, it does set up a combo threat in 1. But it leaves you with 9736. So like it can never win because that card sucks. Right? Like, and maybe that holds. Maybe that was a great hold. Because 5597 and 4 stuff goes, let's say 7971 and 1, something free. And Vid can play this plus and 5, that in fact flips 3 things. He goes up 6-4. But then 9736 and 8 always ties. Always. Because your 9736 cannot flip it. So there's never a win there. Definitely not a win there. But I think, okay, curious move from Stuff. I think, though, if 5597 and 5, what if Stuff played in 4? What if Stuff played 9736 in 5? I imagine Vid has to take 1, like 1986 and 1, and then you play 6289 and 8, and that card is safe, can't be flipped by 1986, no plus wall, and it secures 5 and also the 369 column. So I think it was a better try, but I think it was also losing. And I might just be missing something, right? Very easy to miss something there. But I think Stuff could just block 5. It does set up the 1986 neatly, but I think you just block 5. And then you can take back in 5. All right, Vid's trying to lose 9-1. No, not quite. He's setting up the combo threat. He's now going for the combo threat. Okay, actually, the real question, has Stuff screwed up? And the answer is no, because the combo doesn't do anything. 9736 and 5. But if it wasn't for 9736 and 5 here, this would actually have held. The E almost got this. So this 5597 idea was a creative setup. And actually, that means I completely miscalculated earlier when I was saying 9736 and 8, there's nothing in 4, because I missed this plus that can be set up. 5597 and 4 actually would be a real move there. It still loses, right? Because, so if instead of 6289 and 8, you go 9736 and 8, they play 5597 and 4, you can go in 1. Because when they play 1986 and 5, it flips 2, it flips 4, it flips 6, but it does not flip 8. and it does not flip 7. 7's still yours as well. So you end up with 1, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sorry, not that many. 1, 3, 7, 8, 9, and a card in hand. So stuff still wins 6-4 there. And I think this 5, 5, 9, 7, and 4 idea immediately also loses, but I completely missed it. So really bad work on finding pluses by me. Math is very difficult. I think the losing move is still Vid's move in 6. I think that ends up not working here. And congrats to Stuff. His first semifinals ever, followed by his first finals ever, year of 2024 Stuff. Proving that 2006 truly was much better in play than the modern age. I do not believe that. But, if you want to make a case for it, Stuff is making that case. Congrats to Stuff. He also survives Elemental. And yeah, it's going to be exciting to see him in the finals. Legend from the past coming back to conquer. All right, we'll end the video here.